The Houston Rockets' offensive attack is uniquely dependent on two of the most dynamic guards in the NBA. They control almost all of what the Rockets run on offense, and in order to beat them in a series, you're going to have to do something about James Harden and Chris Paul. Everything starts with the head of the snake, and that is James Harden in isolation. While the Rockets might utilize a little bit of motion to start the possession, once they get deeper than a few seconds into the possession, they start looking for Harden to do his dance and make it rain. And it's not just getting to the hoop, which he does as well as any guard in the league. And with the fear of fouling him and putting him on the free throw line, the defenders have a very difficult time stopping him. Getting a mismatch off a switch is a common action for him, and he's tricky enough to elude the help defense and still finish strong, but with touch. They'll try and spread the floor as wide as possible, creating enough space for him that teams will be wary of helping off shooters to help stop him. One key is to have defenders that can keep him from going left and prevent straight line drives like we see here. And you also need the versatility to handle these switches and not lose much of a step. As you can see, even with Gobert challenging, he can still score over the big. And if the defense is forced to have their center on him, you would need discipline not to reach in and get out of position to let him drive right to the hoop. The best outcome you can hope for is his patented step back three. It's a difficult shot, one that you can get a hand up and contest, and ultimately say a little prayer to the basketball gods that it misses. Harden shot very poorly from the field against the Jazz, so the Warriors will hope that some of these bad brick vibes continue to haunt Harden in this series. Chris Paul also gets his share of isolations as well, and it's a different style but similar results. He can get by the big man on the switch when he's got the mismatch, but his bread and butter is torturing the bigs with complicated dribble combos and tightly guarded mid-range shots. The high pick and roll is the most common thing you'll see out of the Rockets' offense as they simplified their attack to its bare essentials. And those essentials mean almost all layups and threes. With someone like Harden, it's like being in the torture chamber since he's so tricky with the dribble and his body. Even when the Rockets stack three players on the weak side, Harden can put his defender in jail, then float the ball in from 8 feet out, and because of Capella rolling, the big is worried about stepping up to contest. They'll vary the ball screens, like setting 2 in a row to force a switch just before the step-up screen. Now he's collapsing and floating another one over the big. While you want to invite him to shoot a mid-range shot, your big cannot give him too big of a cushion. Otherwise, he'll get right into your body in a hurry and lay it in with a very real possibility of drawing the foul as well. I think it's preferable to go under the ball screen, try to fight around Capella, and get a hand up and contest. The 3-ball is his least dangerous aspect of his game, and considering how he shot versus the Jazz, the safe bet to contain his outbursts. And the best move is to force him away from the ball screen entirely and contest the threes that way. Chris Paul is an entirely different beast in the pick and roll, as he thrives off the mid-range game, using his dribble and change of pace to keep the bigs off balance until he pulls up from short. Most bigs are used to dropping and containing and inviting the shot, but if you do that, Chris Paul will simply roast you. You'll need supreme effort from his man to bust around the screen and get back to his shot to be effective at all against him. And if that's not possible, the big will have to get his hand up and contest the shot and hope that it misses. If all this wasn't enough to deal with, both of these guys will serve up assists in big numbers, and it's with the isolation that Harden sets his teammates up the most. Like we said, they do a great job of spreading the floor so that if you want to help, he's going to find the open man, most likely for an open 3. But because of all the space, once the rotation comes, there's a huge gulf to cut into the lane, and Harden will find him. The biggest fear on his drives, however, is the lob to Capella, since once the backline steps up to help, there is virtually nothing you can do to get up high enough to stop the lob. On these, it would require extremely long athletes that can get up in the air in a hurry. Guys like Kevin Durant, Draymond Green, and even JaVale McGee come to mind. The real key to stopping this is having defenders that can keep Harden in front, and that's where defenders like Klay Thompson and Andre Iguodala come in. Chris Paul gets his dimes mainly out of the pick and roll, and it's really hard to pinpoint any common themes since he can make any pass at any time to any part of the floor. His vision is fantastic, and so is his accuracy and timing. So it's imperative you stick to your defensive principles, don't over-rotate to help, close out properly, and contest shots in the air. Otherwise, it'll be over before it begins. To beat the Rockets, you've got to contain these guys and force the other players into tough shots. To do so, you'd need an ultra-switchy, very long, focused, and intense group of defenders. When the Rockets turn to their offense to help Harden and Chris Paul, they'll use pistol. And again, if you can properly switch these actions, it goes a long way to blowing up the whole offense. So if I were the Rockets, I'd be a little concerned with the way the Warriors have been defending lately. It's been a swarm. And since we know Houston also likes to go small, they'll have to contend with the Hampton 5 lineup with Draymond at center. The deciding factor could very well be if they can keep Capella on the floor to take advantage of his height. If D'Antoni feels compelled to use their lineup with PJ Tucker at center, I fear the Rockets will struggle just enough to let the Warriors seize control of the game. This series will be a wild ride, and I'm sure both teams will approach 120 points each game. If Harden can't shake this shooting malaise, and the Warriors' defense begins to make an impact, it will be a very rough landing for the Rockets. Sports fans, make sure to hit the subscribe button and adjust your settings so you can get notified immediately when we drop another great NBA video. Let us know how you feel with a thumbs up and a comment. After all, at BBallBreakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You win,